We live in a society that is obsessed with this notion. Healthiness equals happiness. And we see examples of this every single time we turn on our TVs or listen to the radio. We see that commercial with the middle-aged woman walking shoreside with her dog, water bottle in hand. She's grinning ear to ear and her life is perfect, all because she went for a jog this morning. And I'm not joking, our society just pushes this notion that healthiness equals happiness, and the way to establishing this healthy lifestyle is through exercise, and more exercise. This then begs the question, is exercise really the most important key? Well, let's rewind the clocks about 7-8 months ago. Back in September, I found myself in a hospital bed fighting for my life. I remember vividly waking up from my colonoscopy to my gastroenterologist standing over me, and with a concerned look in her eyes, she told me, "Bethany, you're sick. You're very sick, and in fact, you're very lucky to be alive today." And that is when she went on to give me this grim diagnosis of progressive Crohn's disease. She then went on to lay out this dark picture of what the next 3 or 4 years of my life was going to look like. So for the rest of that day and for many days to come, I found myself racking my brain trying to understand, what did I do wrong to bring on such a debilitating disease? Because the fact is, I was active. I was active like society suggests. In fact, so active that I spent 3 to 4 hours on average in the gym weight training every single day in preparation for various physique competitions and weight training competitions. So if exercise truly was the key component, why was I sick? So then I decided, okay, I'm missing something, right? And I realized through research and various different steps that I went through personally, I realized the nutrition was the main thing I was missing. But I don't want you guys to take my word for it. No, today we are going to look at several different things. One, we're going to talk about how widespread the issue of obesity and malnutrition is. Two, we are then going to discuss how various nutrients play a role in your body's ability to actually function on a molecular level. 3, we are then going to look at the biggest issue or the biggest barrier to eating healthy or establishing this healthy diet. So first, let's take a step back. Let's look at just how widespread these issues are. I myself work for Via Christi up in their endocrinology department, which means Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, I spend my time with many diabetic patients. So the topic of malnutrition and obesity is one that I'm very familiar with. I have this discussion with people on a daily basis, and it never ceases to amaze me how many people believe that this does not affect them at all. And if you find yourself thinking that, you may be surprised to hear just how widespread this issue really is. In fact, ABC News talks about it in their online article from 2011. They state that since 1980, the world's obesity rate has nearly doubled. They say that in 1980, 4.8% of men and 7.9% of women were considered obese. But unfortunately, those statistics nearly doubled to 9.8% of men and 13.8% of women in 2008. This article also goes on to point out that the issues of hypertension, high cholesterol, they are no longer considered Western problems or the problems of wealthy nations. They are a global issue now. So this then argues that this issue of obesity is not only growing, but it's growing at an unimaginable rate. And with that comes malnutrition. Now, when I say malnutrition, the first thing your brain may jump to is starving children in third world countries. And absolutely, that's a form of malnutrition. But what the general public fails to realize is that it is very possible, and it happens all the time, to be overfed yet nutritionally starved. And that's why you overeat. It's because your body is begging for nutrients, and it tells you it's hungry because it's not getting those nutrients. So, if this is an issue, and we realize that this is an issue, and we accept it, but how does it affect our bodies? Truly, on a molecular level, how does it affect our bodies? And that brings me to my second point, and excuse me as I try to say these names because I may butcher them, and I apologize. But in their article, Association Between Healthy Diet and Exercise and Greater Muscle Mass in Older Adults, Jin-Hee Kim, PhD, Yeon-Hee Lee, MD, and Doctor of Physical Health, Sun-Gi Kai, PhD, Yoon-Suk Chung, MD, PhD, and Kwang-Min Kim, MD, discuss that vegetables such as broccoli, cauliflower, radishes, kale, Brussels sprouts, watercress, and cabbage provide inducers of phase 2 proteins, which are mainly enzymes that inactivate electrophiles and strong oxidants. They argue that the alkalizing effects of these vegetables may neutralize mild metabolic acidosis. They then have been proved to have catabolic influences on muscle. They also state that said vegetables enhance the effects of exercise on muscle by improving non-oxidative glycosis and isometric contraction, reducing fatigue, but then also increasing or improving recovery rate. Now, I know that I just used some big medically termed and scientifically termed words, so let's break it down. What are these doctors talking about? First, they are saying that the nutrients you get from the vegetables stated above, they play a huge role in not only your body's ability to carry away and excrete waste, but then also they play a huge role in balancing your pH. And then lastly, the isometric contraction of a muscle, which means the actual contraction of a muscle that you do when you exercise. These doctors go on to claim that although living an active lifestyle is a good thing to do, without the proper nutrients, it literally renders said exercise useless. It's pointless. Okay, so if we know this, and if we know that these nutrients, if we don't have them, there's no sense in exercising, there's really no sense in trying, right? But why is it so hard to convince the general public to purchase and consume healthy food, nutrient-rich food? That brings me to my third point, and that is eating healthy is expensive, and we know that, right? And in nutrition, exercise essential components for healthy aging, Nations Health argues that for many Americans, especially the older generation, a major barrier to eating healthy is cost. They argue that many individuals face difficult financial trade-offs, such as the need to afford prescription medications and other necessities. So what this is saying is that the general public views the food that they eat as a secondary need. It's not a primary need, it's not a necessity. And see, if that's the case, I would then argue that we need to be re-educated on just how powerful a nutrient-rich diet can be. See, it's not just the good thing or the right thing to eat healthy. In fact, if we do it right and correctly, I would then argue that we can view that food as a way of treating and preventing the various diseases that affect our everyday lives. So it's all about mindset. When you begin to realize or think of your food as medicine, you may go, maybe it is worth a few extra dollars to actually fill my body with what it needs. So let's recap. We know that the issues of obesity, malnutrition, poor diet, they're issues that not only affect the general public, but they affect us. The first step in combating that is to acknowledge it and accept it. Okay, then we just discussed that the food we eat affects our body's ability or inability to actually function. And see, lastly, we know that it's more expensive, we know that it's an investment to eat healthy. But if we change our mindset, we begin to think about it the way that we should, we'll see that, hey, maybe it is worth it, and maybe it's not as big of a burden to eat healthy as we think it is. See, I personally have had an up-close and personal view of just how damaging a nutrient-lacking diet can do to your body. I know what it does. I've experienced it myself. My hope is that you guys learn from my mistakes. I hope that you begin to look at your food as fuel before you experience those life-threatening adverse side effects. And the last thing I want to say, the thing I want to leave you guys with, is that I truly believe with all my heart, the moment that we look at our food as the main source of our nutrients is the day that we stop the monster of disease in its tracks. So thank you.